Hey everybody. So we've got a really awesome guest here for our last talk. I can't think of a better way to go out. He's gone through a lot of interesting stages in his career over the last couple of decades. Not to make him sound too old, but there was one point in time where you'd just see him standing here with a microphone and he was a stand-up comedian. And there's a new point in time that started a couple years ago where he started to make movies. And he's got one here called God Bless America. It's a really wild, subversive film in the Midnight Madness section. I saw it the other night and it played through the roof. So please join me in welcoming BOBCAT GOLDTHWAIT. You got a mic right there.
Well, thank you, Eric. I'm excited that you got this talk show. I think you're going to crush George Lopez.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to do the Grover voice or anything like that.
That's okay. I might actually. This room's so loud. Hey, everybody. I know you're really busy and you haven't seen each other in a while, but if you could be quiet, it'd be really great. I was really big in the 80s, and I think I deserve your respect. Thank you.
It helps when you scream at them a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
I may do the Grover voice. Yeah, I may actually have to do a couple aga-agas.
Well, it's funny because when you came out on stage to introduce God Bless America at the first screening, you looked at the crowd and you said, you know, you don't look the same either.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty funny because, you know, the first movie you directed was Shakes the Clown in the early 90s. Great cult hit movie, but obviously you were in a very different stage of your career back then. And then you went into this really interesting period where you started doing these low-budget productions, starting with Stay, which was at Sundance, and followed by World's Greatest Dad, which starred your pal Robin Williams. And now you're here with this other movie. So now that you've got 3 in the can over the last few years, I mean, what's it like to kind of deal with the former Bobcat and what that shadow does to what people expect?
Well, it's, I know I come with some baggage, so sometimes, well, it's kind of weird. It works differently. Some people think I'm dead, so it's nice to show that I'm not. And then a lot of the people that would have some baggage, I don't know. It's really weird, you know? I think sometimes my past career does probably taint what people might think the movies are going to be about. But, you know, I just keep making them, and then basically I'm just trying to fight the fact that I know that when I die, it will be a picture of me in a police uniform standing next to a talking horse in my obituary, and that's why I make these movies. I'm trying to go out slugging. Like this reporter here, or young person, is clearly wasn't even born when I was popular. So when you say things like, how does it affect him? They're like, I never even heard of you.
Well, but conversely, if someone were to see these movies and then go back and check out some of the stand-up, which is all over YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not embarrassed of my former self, but it's just kind of not what I'm doing right now. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I did those movies when I was in my early 20s, so it's just kind of, I mean, I don't regret them, but it's kind of like on YouTube it'd be like having films of you throwing up at a keg party constantly being played over and over again, because that's the age I was when I made those.
Well, it's actually kind of relevant to some of the themes you explore in God Bless America. I mean, you really savage contemporary media culture in a way. I mean, this is a guy, this like working class guy who just gets really pissed off about how everyone has to cite somebody else to talk, you know, quote media commentators and, you know, obsess over reality stars and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see. In this movie, I mean, I think the difference between that and something like Natural Born Killers is I don't blame the media, and I'm not saying that because I want good reviews. I think I blame us that we are fascinated with these distractions, and I don't. Here's my point. I don't really care about Kim Kardashian at all. I'm not angry at her. I really don't care. I have no opinion. But as a guy who's going to be 50, there's no reason that dumb whore should be in my life. But unfortunately, I have to hear allegedly intelligent adults talk about her. So that's what I'm pissed off at. Like, we just eat all this gobbledygook and just, like you said, regurgitate it, but we don't really, there's no thinking anymore. People aren't, all Frank does in this movie is he really does just want people to act right. I'm old enough that I do remember things like shame, you know, and that everything you do shouldn't necessarily be posted on the web. I can remember back in a day when, in order to be an entertainer, you had to have a talent besides waiting in line. I think I really do think that reality television is the Coliseum. You know, it's this empire is collapsing, but it's much more fun to make jokes about Snooki.
Right. Well, but while Frank may want people to behave correctly, there are some people who he clearly deems beyond that because he goes out with a gun and kills them. So.
Right. So the difference between Frank and I guess, is that I'm not homicidal.
As far as we can tell.
Yeah, whatever. Maybe this was a thing I did so I wouldn't snap and kill people. Now I'd be like, you know, suspect number one.
Right.
You know?
He's got these great monologues in the film where he just, you know, rails on basically the issues that you're talking about here. And at the premiere, people would applaud after each one of those. So it did sort of feel like your voice was coming through very distinctly.
Yeah, when people started clapping after Frank's rants, I had no idea people were going to react that way. I truly, I thought they would like Frank or maybe empathize with him. I didn't think they would actually agree with him, and outside of the killing, obviously. But when they agreed with the things he was saying, it actually did affect me emotionally because I hadn't seen the movie with anyone. I'd finished it Tuesday, so I was really happy to see that it was working for people.
And now it's not just about this guy going around on a killing spree. It's about a guy and a 16-year-old girl going around on a killing spree, which takes that subversive element even further. So walk us through how you decided on that dynamic.
I think because there's a 16-year-old girl involved, and I'm not sure how I decided on that dynamic. I mean, the movie was written as a Christmas present to my wife, so I think I needed. But the thing is that character is the craziest one because she just wishes everybody would be dead. But I think everybody should be killed.
She's got a great takedown of Diablo Cody.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's like people have no problem with you shooting someone in the throat that may or may not be based on Bill O'Reilly.
It's a gray area.
It's a very gray area. He may be saying exact Bill O'Reilly quotes, but his name's called Michael Fuller. And not once does he try to molest a woman with a loofah. So obviously, it's not Bill O'Reilly. But you make fun of Diablo Cody, and all hell breaks loose. She's a 16-year-old girl that's psychotic. I don't think, and she's tough, and she's kind of a badass. I don't think she would ever go, shh, quiet, guys, Juno's on. You know, she's, you know, and my daughter, who is a very funny young woman, whenever she says anything funny, people go, oh, you're like Juno. And she's like, Dad, I want to stab him right in the throat. So I do think Juno is kind of an irresponsible movie because I don't think it's cool to encourage teen pregnancy. I don't know. I don't think that's edgy, crapping out a kid. I think it's a little bit more edgy if you're going to be an underage kid to get a condom.
Well, but do you think God Bless America is a responsible movie?
No, because I don't think people... think people would watch it and go, boy, I want to be cool like Frank and Roxy, because they aren't. They have a terrible end. You know, on the end of that movie, everybody lives happily ever after. So there's no repercussions for that. You know,
it's a spoiler alert, but you kind of
spoiler alert. But I'm very happy with the ending of this movie. It is a little because when I was ego surfing on the net and I was reading what people were saying about it, they're going, and it'll just be a dream and everything will work out, but that's not the end. So fuck off, Buffalo 66 fan number one.
It's funny to hear you say that because you are basically a film buff. I mean, this movie is not just a bunch of static shots of people talking. You do stuff with a camera.
Yeah, this is a new thing for me. I actually moved the camera around, and there's some movies that were really a big influence on this film, and I was really happy to see that some of the critics actually picked up which movies I was just intentionally ripping off or nodding to. I mean, there's a scene right out of Taxi Driver, basically, where when Frank buys he buys an automatic weapon. In the script, I had Frank buying automatic weapon from two 10-year-old boys from East LA on a bicycle, but I thought that seemed kind of racist. And I also thought it'd be kind of funny. And at that point in the movie, I wanted it to be kind of really heavy and serious.
Right. Well, I mean, all three of these more recent movies, I don't know if you think of them as being sort of part of a different class than Shakes, or if you think of that as four movies you've made.
Yeah, I think of them as all different, but I think the last three are very similar in tone.
Yeah.
And then I made another movie that was on Comedy
Windy
Central
City
called
Heat,
Windy
right?
City Heat.
Right.
Yeah, so that's 5 movies I made.
Right.
But
right.
they all have 3 named titles. I don't know. I don't know what that's about. I'm Steven Seagal, although no puppies were injured in the course of making this movie.
They'll leave it up to
Steven
your
Seagal's here, and he just ran over our puppy. All right.
Listen, the interesting thing, though, I mean, outside of,
In Steven Seagal's defense, that puppy was a real asshole.
Well, you don't get into any Steven Seagal jokes in God Bless America.
In God Bless
fortunately.
America, no.
You wouldn't want to stick him on.
You know, sometimes people think that the targets are kind of easy, but I was trying to use really broad targets. There's 2 things that I was not trying to do. I wasn't trying to parody these shows because I actually just took real things that happen on the different shows that I was watching and glommed them together. Mm-hmm. Because I just wanted it to be about not where we're going, but where we already are. You know, this is the only movie I've written that actually takes place now, and that is important. But the 70s movies that I was influenced by in this movie do take place in the 70s. You know, it was movies like Dog Day Afternoon and Network and Badlands. Well, Badlands, no, but Badlands did have an actual specific time.
Well, I wonder when you talk about the writing process behind your movies, if there is a logical connection between the way that you write stand-up bits. I mean, you do still perform stand-up, so you're writing all the time.
Yeah, but the stand-up, the big difference I've realized is that when I'm doing stand-up, I got to keep the dumbest person in the room entertained. But when I make a movie, the dumbest person goes to Zookeeper, so I don't really have to worry about keeping them amused. Sorry, I didn't realize there were so many Kevin James fans in the Filmmakers Lounge. Hey, he's fat. He's funny.
Actually,
Farley's dead. Who's next?
I think actually Horrible Bosses made more money than Zookeeper. They opened the same weekend. So
Oh, yeah? Okay.
maybe things are shifting in your
Yeah,
favor.
well, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, as far as screenwriting goes, I mean, your emergence as a filmmaker came at a later point than for most people. Can you talk about what shifted there? I mean, I know you did some directing of TV stuff.
Yeah, I directed a lot of
Fallon
shows that folks didn't know that I was involved in. I used to direct on the Dave Chappelle Show and The Man Show and Dimitri Martin's show, and I used to direct the Jimmy Kimmel Show. I did that for 3 years. But I mean, I jokingly say that, like, I retired from acting the same time people stopped hiring me, so it worked out pretty well. But I think as a middle-aged guy, I already sold out as a young man. I'm not really interested in that. So these movies are very personal. I'm not trying to make it. I'm not really honestly, I don't really care if I'm famous. I just want to keep making movies, and I hope people will keep supporting them so I can keep making them. I just realized I sound like Dirk Diggler right now. And if you people keep coming to my movies, I'll keep rocking and rolling. But you know, quite often I was speaking with Gus Van Sant the other night, and
I don't like where this is going.
No, I was speaking with Gus Van Sant, and I had to finally, because he was being very sweet and talking to me a little bit as if we were peers, and I finally said, you know, Gus, my movies make hundreds of dollars. Literally hundreds, so.
Well,
That's why I love festivals. To me,
Right.
going to a film festival is like, for a few weeks a year, I get to pretend like, you know, those rich guys pay money so they can play baseball with the pros. This is like fantasy camp for me. I get to pretend I'm a filmmaker for a few weeks, and then I leave here and go play an Indian casino in Iowa. So, actually, that's not true. I'm playing a club called Hyenas in Texas next Friday and Saturday. So come on down, 2 shows.
So when you're standing in an Indian casino, you look out at the crowd and just kind of pretend that they're your movie audience or something?
No, the people that come to see me do stand-up are never the same folks that, they don't know that I make movies. They really do, you know, anywhere that Poison is still performing, that's where I play. I just like follow them around, I really do. So it's a very strange career, and I think it keeps me pretty humble. It's kind of it's kind of have a pretentious bone in your body when when you play. I left Sundance 2 years ago and played a comedy club and fish restaurant in Florida. And my dressing room was a toilet, actual toilet. And I'm sitting there eating fried fish. And I was like, but I was at Sundance. I was an auteur. You know, so
How was the fish?
the fish was actually good, you know. So there is a plus side. There is a silver lining to all these things. But.
Well, you mentioned festivals, and it's true. I mean, when Stay played at Sundance, that was a big moment for you. And
Yeah.
since then, each of the films you've made have had a very interesting festival life. And you've mentioned about this film that seeing A Horrible Way to Die here last year was in some way actually had an impact on making this movie.
Well, because Horrible Way to Die was really great, and it was like kind of like a movie that had two different genres going, you know. And I thought, well, I have a similar kind of thing where I have two different genres going in a movie. You know, this movie does have blood and stuff, but I don't think it's too much. I don't know.
Depends on why the blood is shed, right?
There's a lot of blood in this movie. My daughter and wife and I would just come home and we'd just have blood all over us, and we didn't even know it, you know, until you got home and we got the luminol out. No, until we got home, you'd see it specks all over you.
It's an interesting style. So we'll go to questions in a second, but I'm really curious to know, I mean, you made this movie very quickly. I think you just wrote it a couple months ago, right? I mean,
I wrote this, I rewrote it quickly because I had initially written it for my wife as a Christmas present, but it was 185 pages.
Epic.
There was a lot more killing in the movie, and more fantasies. There was a scene where there's a character that's based like on William Hung on American Idol, and in this version of the script, the William Hung-like character was being crucified like Christ, and the Roman soldiers were the judges from American Idol. And then Frank looks, and he's next to him, crucified, and Roxy's on the other side. And then he rips the nail out of his own hand and pulls out an AK-47, and he starts shooting the Roman soldiers. So we couldn't afford to do that. So that was a longer draft of the movie. So,
save it for the sequel.
yeah. Or the Muppet Baby version of them, when I do them as kids.
Yeah, so I mean, what I was saying was, I mean, you got this one in the bag fairly quickly. I mean, do you feel like creatively you're ready to just go on to the next one, or what's the rhythm like?
Yeah, I mean, I've written a few more movies, and I keep, I've been trying to get this musical going with Ray Davis of the Kinks. I wrote it based on an album of theirs from the 70s, of the Kinks album. And that one is one that it's really my big passion, and I hope to make another movie with the same folks I made this one with.
Cool. All right, do we have some questions here? Right here.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, what's more fulfilling to you, making movies now, or what you achieved in maybe more fame with your comedy back in the 80s or whenever?
That's a good question.
Personally, what has been better for you?
I'm actually way more happier now, and I think that kind of flies in the face of what pop culture tells you. Like, how could you be happy if you're not on a reality show or out in the people's eye? But I'm happier now because these movies are way more personal than my stand-up ever was. I think if you really kind of want to know how I think and who I am, if you watch the movies, you'll get a better idea than if you saw my stand-up. It's taken me this long to get to that point. And I probably, if I hadn't had a career as a stand-up comedian, I would have always probably said, geez, I wonder if I could do stand-up comedy, which was pretty funny, because that's what Gus said the other night when I was talking to him. Gus said, I've always tried. I was like, wow, okay.
Can't imagine what that would look like.
I think it'll be awesome.
More questions from anybody?
What's more exhausting, doing comedy or making a movie?
Making a movie is way more tiring, but it's when you're really tired on stage, no one runs over and says, "Are you okay? Can I get you a latte?" But when you're directing, they do. It's kind of funny because I work with my friends and family, so I can't really ever get too crabby because they're all my friends and family. You know.
There's a question over there.
What was the inspiration for World's Greatest Dad?
Well, I think World's Greatest Dad, I don't know if many folks know it, but it's this movie where Robin Williams has a really horrible son, and then his son dies beating off with a belt around his neck. Spoiler alert. And but it's really a coming-of-age story for an adult man. I mean, I think it took me a little while after I made the movie to realize what it was about, and it was kind of about myself growing some balls as a middle-aged guy saying, you know what, I'm not going to be in relationships that aren't good for me. I'm not going to take a job that's not good for me. And the reason I made the son horrible is because I didn't want to make a movie about toxic relationships between a guy and a female. So I thought, well, you know what, you could also have a child that's really bad for you that you cling to. So that's what
Any more questions from people? It's actually something I wanted to bring up. They'll think of some more good ones. I trust this crowd.
I got them right in the palm of my hand.
Sarah
They're just staring at me. Could you do the voice? Did the black guy from Police Academy really make those noises? I have a question.
Might as well just interview yourself. You know?
What's that? Yeah. So, Bobcat, where did you get the name Bobcat? Well, when I was a kid, I was 15 years old, and I started doing stand-up comedy then, and there was a guy who was a good friend of ours, and he decided that his stage name was going to be Bearcat. And Tom Kenny, who's SpongeBob SquarePants, and many other things, has been my best friend since I was 6 years old. And we were doing comedy then, and he said, that's weird, because my name's Tomcat. And I go, yeah, please bring me up as Bobcat. That's my nickname, too. And then, 27 years go by, and I'm Bobcat, and they're Tom and Barry. So the joke actually backfired on me.
Yeah, it's funny to hear you talk about that stuff because stand-up comedy, unlike other forms of, creative professions, doesn't have any specific sort of protocol as far as, how you break in. I mean, in your case, it was like Joan Rivers thought you were funny and just, happened to be hosting The Tonight Show and put you on. So do you hear from younger stand-ups who want to know, what the secret is, and have you come up with some wisdom for them?
No, because it's weird. Like, I stopped doing stand-up for a long time, and then I came back to it, and it changed completely. It'd actually be a younger person probably telling grandpa how to become a stand-up comic, because they're all on Facebook, and they all post clips of themselves, and they all tweet all day, and it's really changed. Stand-up comedy used to be about, I had something to say, I'm going to say it for 50 minutes, And now, if you're a stand-up comedian, you're supposed to reduce yourself to a reality star and constantly be writing, and I don't have it in me.
Well, one thing that doesn't seem to have changed is this some element of political correctness that mandates what you can and can't say on stage or how people are going to react to it. I mean, if you look at what happened with Tracy Jordan a few weeks ago, he made some gay comment or homophobic comment.
But I think that's good. I think people should be kept in check. If you have some ignorant thing and you're saying it on stage, I think it's fine. I mean, no one's saying that he can't say it, but you can't expect the audience to just go with it and say, yeah, Tracy Morgan, you're right. I think people confuse freedom of speech with, no one's suppressing anyone's freedom of speech. Frank even says that. I'll defend anyone's freedom of speech if it's in jeopardy. But if you work for a giant corporation and then you say something asinine and they fire you, it's like, well, boo-hoo, you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? It's like, that's the beauty of being gainfully unemployed in the motion picture and television business. I can say anything I want, except don't fuck with Diablo Cody. Ooh. If you haven't seen the movie, the line is something about she's the only stripper that suffers from too much self-esteem.
That one played well.
It played well with you, but, oh.
Do we have more questions for me? Oh, see, we got a bunch.
When you're writing scripts, do you try to keep a notice of how many gags or jokes you have per page, or do you worry about that after you've structured the story?
Yeah, I don't. When I'm writing a screenplay, that's a good question. I don't really think of it in terms of like, well, is this? You know, I try not to think about the jokes, and I try not to think about. I try to actually tell the story, and then realize that hopefully it'll just keep getting funnier as we work it out and stuff. So I don't sweat it on that. But most of the comedy in the movies I make come from how awkward it is, you know. So it's not as joke driven. But and the cool thing is when that's the kind of comedy that you're going for, you never know where the laugh's really going to be, you know, until you see it with a crowd, you know, and they're going, oh. I don't know if they're comedies, maybe. Maybe I'm making some sort of horror pictures or something.
I think we have another one here.
Did you ever think about not using your stand-up name for your movie-making name, given that your audiences don't know each other?
Yeah, they don't know each other, but I think I would vomit a little bit if I saw that, you know, like if it said BOBCAT GOLDTHWAIT. No, I'm Bob Goldthwait, the auteur, you know.
Robert.
Yeah, it'd be like, look, it's still Ricky Schroeder, I don't care. But, okay, Rick. So I even though I seem very serious in this interview, I don't want to take myself seriously. I don't want to suddenly, you know, I think it's great that Terry Gilliam's film company is Poo Poo Pictures after all these years. It's like, you're the guy that made Brazil. Yeah, I know, but it's Poo Poo Pictures, you know. I think it's important to try to keep a perspective on who I am, you know.
I think I've heard people call you Bob Scratch before.
Bob Scratch Goldfarb was an actual, I collect them too. You know, when I worked with Richard Donner, he never called me by the right name. He'd be like, Mad Dog, Rat, Cat, Fuck, ah. So.
That explains
By
that.
the way, what are we recording this for?
Oh, just the world.
Oh,
like,
the world? Is it on the
posterity.
interweb? Because I'm saying, if you want to come to TIFF next year, a great way to save money is volunteer, and don't show up, but get the T-shirt and change your phone number, and you can see all the movies you want for free. Just wear the T-shirt.
Well, on that note, BOBCAT GOLDTHWAIT, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.